Fine. So as I said that VTP is the Cisco proprietary protocol, and simply they launched this VTP in this protocol just to propagate your VLAN information, just to span your VLAN information throughout the switched network, right? So this is the only task done by VTP, just VLAN information, nothing else. Like if you allocate VLAN, if you configure some VLAN membership on any one of the switches, it doesn't mean that, like for an example, on switch 1 you configured 0 by 1 in VLAN 10, it doesn't mean that on all switches now 0 by 1 will be member of VLAN 10. Fine. So that's what I mean to say, that VTP will be responsible to span or to propagate only and only VLAN's information, right? So this is the only task done by VTP. And in VTP, as you know, that we are having three versions, like VTP version 1, VTP version 2, and VTP version 3. I know that all of you are expert in VTP version 1 and version 2, so I'll be discussing only and only VTP version 3, right? Because it's quite easy to configure VTP version 1 and version 2. There should not be any problem for all of you in VTP version 1 as well as VTP version 2. Okay, the very first thing that you must remember before going to configure this VTP in your switched network, in your switched domain, that there must be at least one trunk port available in between switches, right? If there is no trunk port available, let's say that there are few switches like switch 1, switch 2, then switch 3, and let's say switch 4 is also there. Fine. So if these switches are interconnected with each other in this manner, then remember that before going to configure VTP, before configuring VTP on all switches, make sure that all switches are having at least one trunk port, because if there is no trunk port available in between switches, then of course VTP information can move from one switch to another switch. So very primary, the very first requirement before going to configure VTP is trunking. So if you are, if you find that VTP is not working anymore and the whole configuration of VTP is fine, is correct, like VTP password is matching, everything is matching, but still VLAN's information is not going from one switch to another switch. In that case, you can simply check your trunking first, right? Because if trunking is not available, then definitely VLAN's information can move from one switch to another switch. So this is very first requirement before going to configure VTP. Now next thing is, like in VTP, then that you must remember that okay, let's start from VTP version 1 and version 2 only. I will not do any configuration related to version 1 and version 2, but we can discuss something. We can discuss some theoretical concepts of VTP version 1 and VTP version 2. So as you know very well that in both versions of VTP, like whether it is VTP version 1 or VTP version 2, you are having three modes. One is server, and then of course there is client, and finally there is transparent. There are three modes available only in VTP version 1 and version 2 both. Fine. Server, client, and transparent. On some platforms you will find that default VTP mode will be server, and on some platforms you will also find that default VTP mode will be transparent. So it will be depending on platforms, right? So in some cases you can find your default VTP mode as transparent, and in some cases you can find your default VTP mode as server as well. Okay, now you must remember, or you must be having this information, you must understand that what are the differences in between VTP mode, server, client, and transparent. So I hope that all of you are remember, all of you understand the differences in between server, client, and transparent. Like if you talk about the server, in server mode it means you can add, remove VLANs, and also it can work as a relay agent. Yes. It can also work as a relay agent. So what do you mean by relay agent? Like for an example, for an instance, let's say that one switch which is working in VTP mode server received any VTP update from one of the neighbor switch, right? Then it can forward those VTP updates towards another neighbor switch. That's why I said that it can also work as a relay agent. Fine. Then next is client. You know very well that if your VTP mode is configured as client, then definitely you cannot add or remove VLAN from your VLAN database of any switch. If your VTP mode is configured in client mode. Fine. Then transparent is something different. Like you understand very well that what are the differences in between server and transparent. See, in both modes, whether it is server or transparent, you can add or remove VLANs from its database. Fine. But the major difference in between server and transparent is, like server, can propagate its VLAN information towards all other switches throughout the network, right? But if your switch is working in VTP mode transparent, then it will never advertise, it will never propagate its own VLAN information towards any other switch in the domain, in the VTP domain, right? Inside the VTP domain. So I hope that now you understand the uses of this transparent, I mean the differences in between server and transparent. And one more thing, if your switch is configured in VTP mode transparent, yeah, that's true that it will never propagate, it will never advertise its own VLAN information towards any other switch in the network, right? But also, if it receives any VTP update, right, if it receives any VLAN information from its neighbor switch, then it will never update its own VLAN database on the behalf of the received VTP updates. But it can advertise them towards another switches, right, towards neighbor switches. Fine. So that is why we can say that in transparent mode your switch will be working as a relay agent, but it will never update its own VLAN database based on received VTP updates from neighbor switches, and also cannot advertise its own VLAN information towards any other switch in the domain. Have you understood the differences in between server, client and transparent? One more difference is there, like in server and client mode, I'm talking about the VTP version 1 and VTP version 2. If your VTP mode is configured either as server or client, in these two modes you cannot add or remove extended VLAN. You understand? Extended VLANs, and also you cannot add, you cannot create private VLANs as well. If your VTP mode is configured as server on a switch, then definitely you cannot create private VLANs, and also you cannot add extended VLANs. Fine. And VLAN information will always get stored inside VLAN.dat file. If your VTP mode is either server or client, then remember that your VLAN information will always get stored in VLAN.dat file. Next is transparent. If you talk about the VTP mode transparent, are you getting my point? If you talk about the VTP mode transparent, then in this mode you can add or remove extended VLANs as well. The second thing, you can also create private VLANs, means private VLANs are supported by VTP mode transparent only. Fine. The next thing, I mean, like if you are planning to deploy private VLANs in your switched domain, then definitely your VTP mode must be configured as transparent. The next thing is, like if your VTP mode is configured as transparent, then remember that your VLANs information will always get stored in VLAN.dat file as well as running config, and if it is in running config, it means you can also store it in startup configuration. So I hope that now you have understood the differences in between server, client and transparent. Fine. This is all about the VTP version 1 and version 2 only. Okay. Now you know very well that by default VTP version 1 is always configured on all switches, right? Like whenever you will see that, I mean, this is the default version of VTP, fine, on all switches. This is default version of VTP, which is VTP version 1, right? And you also understand that without configuring VTP domain name on switches, VTP will never work. Is it really possible for VTP to do function even without configuring VTP domain name? Have you ever seen that VTP is working without having domain name? So after trunking, the next requirement will be domain name. If you don't configure VTP domain name on your switches, then definitely VTP will not generate any type of update, will not generate any type of message. Are you getting my point? It means if you configure VLAN on any one of these switch, then definitely it is not gonna to propagate that VLAN information towards, I mean, all other switches in your switched network. Fine. So that's all about the requirements of VTP. Next is CR number, and I hope that all of you knows very well that what is the significance of this CR number in VTP. Actually, CR number is everything for VTP. If CR number is not there, then definitely it will not be possible for VTP to update its neighbor switches. Fine. So basically VTP will be updating its neighbor switches based on CR number only. And you must remember that Whenever you will add or remove VLANs from the VLAN database of your switch, then its CR number will always be incremented by 1. You know very well, right? And whenever a switch receives VTP updates, try to be on time, please, from next time. So if any switch receives any VTP update with higher CR number, right, then remember, like for an example, a switch, there is a switch 2, its own CR number is, let's say, 10, and now it received one VTP update with CR number 11. If it receives with CR number 9, then definitely it is not gonna to accept it. It's not gonna to update its own VLAN database based on received VTP update. Fine. Even if it receives VTP update with the same CR number, then also it is not gonna to update its own VLAN database. Fine, based on received VTP updates. But if a switch receives any VTP update with higher CR number, then definitely it will update its own VLAN database. 1020. Fine. So in this manner, switches will update their VLAN database based on received VTP updates. I think now it's enough discussion related to VTP version 1 and version 2. Fine. Now let me ask you one question related to exams and also related to interview as well. For an example, this is switch 1 and this is switch 2. This is 0 by 21 and this is also, let's say, 0 by 21, and it is configured as a trunk port. Trunking is already there. Now here VTP domain, let's say it is domain name is CCIE. Fine. Now you find that, I mean, let's say that its domain name is configured, and here it is, I mean, domain name is configured something like this on both switches, CCIE, right? But mistakenly they configured here 1E. Fine. Okay, VTP password is matching, right? Now the CR number of switch 1 is 10. CR number of switch 2 is 5. Now VLANs are there here on switch 1, 1, 10, 20, 50, 99, 110, 220. These VLANs are present in the database of switch 1. But these VLANs are not present on switch 2. Now you have to solve this problem. How will it be possible? Wait. How will it be possible to take these VLANs information on switch 2? What will you do? See, VTP password is matching. Let me tell you, VTP password is, let's say, Cisco. Here also VTP password is Cisco. So password is configured correctly on both switches. So how will you solve this problem now? Like for an example, let's say this is in server mode. This is client. Behind this switch we are having a PC lane user. Now this lane user took another switch here, even configured it in VTP mode client, right, and configured its domain name as well. Let's say it was CCIE. Fine. And if it is having higher CR number, even though it is not having any VLAN available in its VLAN database, right, but still it will replace other switches database immediately if this client switch is having higher CR number. So actually in VTP doesn't matter whether you are server or client. A switch a switch with having higher CR number will always be known as boss, or will always be boss, whether it is in server mode or in client mode. So I hope that now you have understood this thing. Have you? Hello? Have you understood it now?
Yes.
For sure. Great. To protect your network, your switched network from these kind of attacks. Are you getting my point? To prevent your switched network from these kind of attacks, we are having VTP password. So if you have configured VTP password, then you can prevent your network, right? But still, if your attacker knows about VTP password, still they can do whatever they want. It's not it. Because if you have configured your VTP mode as client, then you can also make it VTP mode server. And when you convert your VTP mode client to server, it doesn't ask for authentication. Have you ever seen that when you changed your VTP mode from client to server or server to client, that it asks for any kind of authentication? Have you ever seen it? So in VTP version 1 and version 2, if you change its VTP mode from either server to client or client to server, it will never ask for any kind of authentication. It means anytime any user can change its VTP mode client to server as well as server to client. So let's say that you have configured any switch in VTP mode client, then after also anyone can change its VTP mode from client to server, and then after they can add or remove VLANs from that switch. So still there are some security vulnerabilities in VTP version 1 as well as version 2. That is why in VTP version 1 and version 2, in most of the cases we configure VTP mode as transparent. We do not use the combination of server and client, because if you are using VTP mode transparent, it means that if you are adding or removing any VLAN from any one of the switches, then its impact will never be on any other switch in your switched domain, right? That is why in live networks you will always find your VTP mode configured as transparent. So I hope that now you have understood the importance of VTP mode transparent. Even like in VTP version 1 and version 2, as I have already discussed it with you, that if you want to configure private VLAN, then again you have to configure your VTP mode transparent, or if you want to create extended VLAN, then also you have to configure your VTP mode as transparent. Any problem?
No.
All right. And one more thing that you must remember, that for an example, if you are having a switch 1 here, and this is switch 2, and this is switch 2, so it's 3, sorry, and then behind switch 3 you are also having like switch 4. You know very well, if you talk about the default VTP configuration, then by default it runs version 1. Domain name is null, password null. VTP version 2 is by default disabled, is not it? And VTP CR number is by default 0, and like VTP pruning is by default disabled. So this is the default configuration of VTP, fine. And because this is the default configuration of VTP, it means that if you want to configure VTP domain name, again there will be some problems. Like for an example, I want to configure my VTP domain name as cisco.com on all switches, fine. So will I require to access the console of each switch to configure VTP domain name?
No.
Remember, if all switches are having their domain name as null, if all switches are having their VTP domain name as null, then what can you do actually? You can configure your VTP domain name only on one switch. Like, it's not mandatory to configure it only on server. By default, let's say that all switches are working in VTP mode server. So if you configure VTP domain name, let's say only on switch 1, let's say you configure domain name as Cisco cisco.com. Fine. It will immediately update the domain name of switch 2 as well. Fine. And then switch 2, see, switch 1 will immediately update the domain name of switch 2 because it is directly connected to switch 1, but it will not immediately update the domain name of switch 3 and switch 4. I'm not saying that the domain name of switch 3 and switch 4 will never get updated. No, they will, but they can take up to 5 minutes, 300 seconds. They can take up to 5 minutes. And we are also having some technical reasons behind all these things. You know why? Because whenever you will configure VTP domain name on switch 1 very first time, it will immediately generate, because in VTP you must remember that there are 3 types of messages available. One, summary advertisement, subset, and finally advertisement request. If you talk about the summary advertisement, which is responsible to contain your domain name information, CR number, MD5 digest value, your version, and of course TLV type, length and value. All this kind of information will be contained by summary advertisement. But remember that summary advertisement will never contain VLAN's information. VLAN information will always be contained by subset advertisement. Have you understood my point? So there are 3 types of packets available in VTP: summary advertisement, subset advertisement, and advertisement request. Fine. So whenever you will configure this domain name on switch 1, it will immediately generate a summary advertisement and will give it to switch 2. Switch 2 will receive this summary advertisement with same CR number, because switch 2's its own CR number is what? 0 by default, and switch 1 CR number is also by default 0. So this time switch 2 will receive this summary advertisement with CR number 0, and its own CR number is also 0. So ideally it should ignore this VTP update. But remember that when this switch 2 received this summary advertisement from switch 1 on this interface, at that moment its domain name was null. So remember that if a switch receives any summary advertisement, any VTP update in its null state, I mean to say when its domain name is configured as null, right? In that case it will configure its own domain name same as that domain name which came or which was in received VTP updates. Let's say here you configured cisco.com. So as I said, that summary advertisement will be responsible to take this information, to take this domain name information. Fine. So whenever switch 2 will receive this summary advertisement, it will also find this domain name cisco.com. Is not it? So whenever this switch 2 will receive this summary advertisement in null state, it will also configure its domain name as cisco.com. But because it has ignored this update due to CR number, same CR number, so it will not recalculate its MD5 digest value. I got my point? It will not recalculate its MD5 digest value because it said, I mean, it found that I received this VTP update with same CR number, so it ignored that VTP update, right? And if your switch do not receive VTP update with higher CR number, till that your switch will never recalculate its own MD5 digest value. So now what will happen, because switch 1 have sent MD5 digest value after configuring domain name, whereas switch 2 is still using the previous MD5 digest value. So now what will happen, that the MD5 digest value will also get mismatched in between these two switches now, switch 1 and switch 2. That is why this switch 2 will not transmit a copy of that summary advertisement immediately out from this interface, because it will think that something is wrong on this switch now, but will configure its domain name as cisco.com. So now because it didn't transmitted a copy of that summary advertisement which came from switch 1 towards switch 3, So what will happen now, because you know very well that in VTP we are having two types of updates. One is periodic update, another one is triggered update. I mean to say event driven updates. Event driven updates means whenever you will add or remove any VLAN from its VLAN database, then it will immediately generate VTP update. Second, if there is no change in its VLAN database, then also it will generate an update, but after 300 seconds. So this time switch to, because this time it have configured its own domain name, right? So after 300 seconds, switch 2 can also it can also generate one summary advertisement which will be forwarded towards switch 3, and this time switch 3 will also update its own domain name dynamically. Fine, but took like almost 300 seconds. But in case if you want that switch 1 must, I mean like if you want that if I configure domain name on switch 1, then this domain name must be configured immediately on other switches as well. So what can you do after configuring domain name? Do one thing, add one VLAN or remove one VLAN from switch 1 so that its CR number will become 1. So whenever a switch 2 will receive, I mean whenever any switch, any other switch will receive this update, they will receive it with higher CR number. So whenever they will receive it with higher CR number, then they will recalculate their amplified digest value so that it will not get mismatched, right? And if it does not get mismatched, then definitely switch 2 will immediately transmit a copy of that received update towards switch 3 as well. Switch 3 will also accept it and also will send one copy of that received message towards switch 4 as well. It means that you can immediately update this domain name on all switches dynamically, so that you will not require to configure this VTP domain name on each and every individual switch. Have you understood it now? So if you are having VTP domain as null on all switches, then you will not require to configure your domain name on each and every switch. But remember, once you have configured VTP domain name on your switch, then after you cannot update their domain name dynamically. Let's say on all switches now you configure cisco.com, but now you want to configure as juniper.com. Let's say you want to configure the domain name as juniper.com. So if you change it on switch 1, it will start to show you that VTP domain name is mismatched, and DTP will not be able to perform negotiation. Remember, if your VTP domain name is mismatched, then DTP cannot perform trunk negotiation. You must remember these things. Fine. So if you configure like VTP domain name now on switch 1, like in place of cisco.com you configure juniper.com, then after you have to move on each and every switch and you have to update it manually, statically. It will never get updated dynamically. Remember all these things. Fine. So this is all about VTP version 1 and version 2. The next thing that we must be familiar, what are the differences in between VTP version 1 and version 2? So what are the differences in between these two versions of VTP? That's all about the differences in between VTP version 1 and version 2. But here I would like to say that you will always configure VTP version 2 only on your switches by default, right? In most of the cases you will find only and only VTP version 2, right? Nowadays we do not prefer to use VTP version 1. Even I would say that in live networks nowadays you will also not find this VTP version 2 as well. Nowadays we have started to implement this VTP version 3. Now VTP version 3 have a lot of enhancement over VTP version 1 and version 2. So we have to discuss all those enhancements, all those differences actually, right? Like the major problem with VTP version 1 and version 2 both is security vulnerability. Fine. Like as I said, you can configure VTP mode client to server anytime. You can add or remove VLAN. Might be that you are having more than one server with, more than one switch in VTP mode server. Then on all switches you can add or remove VLANs. Is not it? So it was kind of security vulnerability. And even if client is having higher CR number, even if you add a client with higher CR number, then also it will replace all other switches VLAN database immediately. Is not it? So In VTP version 1 and version 2 both, we are having a lot of security vulnerabilities. They removed all these types of security vulnerabilities by implementing VTP version 3, or by introducing this VTP version 3. So in version 3 there are a lot of security enhancements, and I'll be discussing all those enhancements with you, right? And also we were having some problems in VTP version 1 and version 2 both, like it was not possible to create extended VLAN in VTP mode server and client. But if you are using VTP version 3, then you can add extended VLANs. You can add or remove extended VLAN even in VTP mode server and client. I mean, now these two modes will also support extended VLANs.
So
second thing,
even in client can we create?
you cannot create, but at least client will accept this extended VLAN, is not it? The next thing is private VLANs. Till now, I mean in VTP version 1 and version 2, to configure private VLAN on your switch, it was mandatory to configure VTP mode as transparent. But in VTP version 3, you can create your private VLAN even in mode server as well. It means that if you configure private VLAN, if you create private VLAN on any one of these switch in VTP version 3, then those private VLANs can be propagated throughout the switched network. So you will not, let's say that you want to implement private VLAN on multiple switches in your switched network, fine. So you will not require to create private VLANs on each and every switch individually. No, just create it only on one switch, then all those private, all that information will be propagated throughout the switched network, but in VTP version 3 only. Password, VTP password in both versions, like version 1 and version 2, cannot be secure even after enabling service password encryption as well. Like if you enable service password encryption on your device, because if you enable service password encryption on your device, it means it will encrypt all available passwords on your device, fine. But VTP password will never get encrypted in version 1 and version 2. So that was also another security risk in VTP version 1 and version 2, fine. So they solved this problem in VTP version 3, because in VTP version 3 your VTP password can also encrypt it. So these are the differences in between VTP version 1, 2 and 3. So what do you want? Do you want to do some configuration related to VTP version 1 and version 2, or do you want to go directly for VTP version 3 now? Version 3? Are you okay with version 1 and version 2? All of you? So let's do some configuration related to VTP version 3 now. Okay. Class access some devices. Sure, sir. All right. This is switch 3, and let me have the console of switch 4 as well. And first of all, let me prove your things like transparent and all, right? So it's already having, I think, its domain name. No, there is no domain name. Fine. Let me do one thing then. no domain name, and CR number is by default here 3, but there is no domain name, right? On switch to show VTP status, is there any domain name? No. Show VTP status, no domain name, right? So let's do one thing. Let's create this diagram in this manner now. Switch 1 will be connected with switch 2, switch 2 will be connected with switch 3, switch 3 will be connected with switch 4. Fine. So let's do one thing. On switch 1, let me shut down all other interfaces except 21 and 22. So interface range fast Ethernet 1/0/19 to 20, and then fast Ethernet 1/0/23 to 24. Fine. Switch port, sorry, first of all shut down them, right? And because switch 1 and 2 cannot form trunking dynamically, because on both ends by default their mode is dynamic auto. So interface range fast Ethernet 1/0/21 to 22, and then you can say switch port mode dynamic desirable. Fine. And then you can see show interfaces trunk now. On switch 2 trunking is there, no problem, but you need to shut down show CDP neighbor because it is connected with switch 4 as well. So 23 and 24 must be, not 23, 24 actually, 19 and 20 must be shut down. So interface range fast Ethernet 1/0 sorry, yeah it is 1/0/19 to 20, shut down then. So that now it will be connected with switch 1 and switch 3 only. Show CDP neighbors, as you can see now that it is connected with switch 1 and switch 3 only. And then of course switch 3 must be connected with switch 4 and switch 2, both of them. And trunking must be there. So interface is trunk, you see. So trunking is already configured, fine. So now do one thing. Show VTP status, its CR number is 3. Here on switch 2 show VTP status, CR number is 2. So what can we do? VLAN 10, no VLAN, oh sorry, leave it now. Show VTP status. Now its CR number will be is still 2. Let me check it out. Now it is 3, same, right? Same as like switch 1. Switch 1 was also having its CR number as 3. Show VTP status, switch 3, its CR number is 0, right? So what can we do now? VLAN 10, no VLAN 10, VLAN 10, no. Show VTP status, check it out. It must be 3 now, right? And then what can we do? We can move on switch 4 and do show VTP status. Check it out. Its CR number is also 0. So VLAN 10, no VLAN 10, and VLAN 10. Show VTP status. Now all of them are having same CR number, right? And now let's do one thing. Let's move on switch 2 and let's say VTP mode is what? Transparent. Show VTP status. Now its mode is transparent, no domain name, right? Version is 1. On all switches you are running VTP version 1 now. Show VTP status, as you can see that VTP version 1 is there. Fine. Then after, what will I do actually? I will move on switch 3 and I can also configure VTP mode as client. So show VTP status, as you can see that now its CR number is still 3, right? But version is what? 2. I think we have to change its version. Because on all other switches I'm using VTP version 1. So it must be VTP version 1. Okay. VTP mode is what? Server. VTP version is what? If I configure 1 now, its CR number will be updated by 1. See, show VTP status. Now it must be. Oh. I think version 2 is disabled. It means it is running version 1. In some iOS's you will find that it will show you that VTP version as 2, but it will not be running that VTP version. So because by default VTP version 2 is disabled, it means it will be running only VTP version 1, right? So now you can see that it is running VTP version. However, it is not showing you in the output of this show VTP status command, right? But still it is running VTP version 1 only. Sometimes it happens. So now what can we do? We will move on switch 1 and I will say VTP domain name, and let's say it is CCIE. Fine. So now you see show VTP status. Its domain name is now CCIE. Show VTP status. Check it out. Its domain name is what? Nothing. Now you can move on switch 3, show VTP status, and its domain name is what? CCIE. And then after you can move on switch 4 as well, show VTP status. Its domain name is also CCIE. But transparent didn't configured its own domain name. Now what can we do? Because all of them are having same CR number, we can move on switch 1 and then we can say VLAN, like show VLAN brief, like we can create VLAN 1 to 10 and then after show VLAN brief. So all these VLANs must be present on switch 3, like show VTP status. Check it out. Yes, CR number is 4. It means VLANs have also been created on switch 3, right? But here you can see that, okay, might be possible that if transparent is in null state, then it will accept, it will allow all updates. But if you configure VTP domain, let's say CC, now it is CC1E, right? Even let me show you debug, VT debug switch VLAN VTP packets as well as events. Now it is showing you that it is not possible for DTP to perform trunk negotiation. So to solve this problem, what can we do? We can configure trunking in between switches. Statically we can disable this DTP, right? It is not always mandatory to use DTP, because if you are using different VTP domain names, it means that DTP will stop to do work, right? I mean, it will not be possible for DTP to perform trunk negotiation. Fine. So to solve this problem, we can disable this DTP and we can configure trunking manually. So let's start it from switch 1. And on switch 1, what can we say? Interface range fast Ethernet 1/0/21 to 22. Switch port trunk encapsulation is what? .1Q. Switch port more trunk and switch port no negotiate. Do show history. So this command will be common on all switches, right? So I will copy it and paste on all of the switches. Do show CDP neighbor. So it is connected, I mean, with 21 to 24, right? So interface range fast Ethernet 1/0/21 to 24, and remaining commands will be same. And in same manner, I will move on switch 3, and on switch 3 interface, check it out. Do show CDP neighbor. Okay, so it is connected with the 21 to 24. So interface range fast Ethernet 0 by show interfaces trunk. On switch 4, 23 and what was that actually?
21.
Interface range fast Ethernet 0/21 to 22. Switch port trunk encapsulation .1Q. Switch port mode trunk. Switch port no negotiation. What happened to it now? Show run interface fast Ethernet 0/21. Check it out. Show interfaces status, right? Let's not connect. default interface range fast Ethernet 0 by 19 to 24. Something went wrong on the switch. 0 by 21 to 24. Shut down them. Sometimes it happens. After shutting down and no shut on all these interfaces, now we can see that everything is fine. Trunking is there, right? So there is no problem now, and I have configured different domain name on switch 2 now, which is in transparent mode, right? So if you move on switch 1, and even I have also enabled debugging on switch 2 now. So what can I do now on switch 1? I will add or remove any VLAN, right? So VLAN brief. A lot of VLANs are there. I will remove any single VLAN, like no VLAN I set 50. So if I configure this command, you see it received the packet on 21, not in domain CCIE, because it received a packet with domain name CCIE and its own domain name is what? CC1E. That is why it has dropped this packet. So if transparent bridge is in null state, then only it can allow your VTP updates. Even if you configure VTP version 2 also, then also same things will, these things will remain same. Let me configure VTP version 2 as well. So if you configure now VTP version 2, because on all switches VTP version 1 is running, as book says that in VTP version 2, of course it must allow your updates, even if domain name is also different. But it will not allow, like you can configure VTP version 2 here, again it will give these updates to the transparent and it has dropped them, right? Even you can configure VTP version 2 here as well on switch 2, and then on switch 3 like configure VTP version 2. On switch 4 also configure your VTP version 2. However, it is not mandatory to configure version 2 manually. You can also configure it dynamically, right? Like I configured it only on switch 3, then on switch 4 it updated automatically. Fine. Yeah. Then after you do one thing, create VLAN like 100 here, and you see that again show VTP status, and now you are running VTP version 2 on transparent bridge. Even on switch 1 also you are running VTP version 2. So you can see now that show VLAN brief, that VLAN 100 is available here, but this VLAN 100 will not be available on switch 3. So I hope that now you have understood all these things. Is it there? Only VLAN 50, up to VLAN 50 are available here on switch 3, but VLAN 100 is not available on switch 3 as well as on switch 4. Because transparent bridge, transparent switch didn't allow all those VTP updates, all those VTP packets due to mismatch of domain. So I hope that now you have understood all these things. So remember that transparent bridge can allow your VTP updates in null state as well.
Same domain.
But if domain name is different, then it will never allow your VTP updates, whether you are running VTP version 1 or VTP version 2. So that's all about VTP version 1 and version 2. Even let me show you one more thing here. Let's say that you configure VTP password here. VTP password is like Cisco. Fine. So if you configure this command show VTP password, it will always show you Cisco, right? Even after enabling service password encryption, show VTP password. Fine. So you cannot secure this VTP password in VTP version 1 as well as VTP version 2. To solve this problem, now they launched VTP version 3. So we can configure here now VTP version 3. So to configure VTP version 3, we can say no VTP password first of all. And the second thing, to configure VTP version 3, the requirements will again remain same. Very first thing, if you have not configured VTP domain name, till that you cannot convert your VTP version from either 1 or 2 to version 3. Means before converting your VTP version into 3, you must configure VTP domain name. It's mandatory. Right now we are having this domain name here, show VTP status. As you can see that our domain name is what? CCIE. Fine. So what can we do now? We can say VTP version 3. So now we have configured VTP version 3. See, show VTP status. Now you can see that VTP version 3. Domain name is what? Pruning is by default. And for feature VLAN, by default its operating mode is what? Server. Number of existing VLAN is what? 16. Even what can I do? See, it is in server mode, right? It is in server mode. Now I will try to delete my VLANs, VLAN 1 to 100. What does it say? This is the security feature of VTP version 3, that even you are having your switch in VTP mode server, but still you cannot add or remove VLAN from your VLAN database. Let me describe you now something related to VTP version 3. In VTP version 3, you are having 4 modes. Client, server, transparent are same as VTP version 1 and version 2. But here you are also having another mode which is known as off. Off is in somehow mode off is same as transparent. The only thing which is different in mode off, that it does not work as a relay agent. Like in transparent, of course it is not gonna to advertise its own VLAN information towards any other switch, and also it is not gonna to update its own VLAN database based on received VTP update, right? But still transparent can work as a relay agent, as we have seen it, right? We have already we saw that with VTP mode transparent was working as a relay agent. Like I configured switch 2 as switch 2 in VTP mode transparent. I created VLAN on switch 1 and then switch 2 received those updates and forwarded them towards switch 3 and switch 4, right? But if you configure VTP mode off in version 3, it will not work as a relay agent. It will be like completely standalone switch, and in most of the cases you will find your VTP mode as off only on edge switches, like let's say for an example, I'm having one switch and now through this switch another switch is connected, but that another switch is located in different switching domain. Are you getting my point? Let's say that you are having 2 different organizations. Let's take an example of 2 different organizations, and this is organization A and this is B, and this is edge switch of this organization A and this is the edge switch of this organization B. So mainly on these 2 edge switches you will configure your mode off, so that VLAN information of this network can't move towards this, right? Towards another like you can say organization, and the VLAN information of organization B can't move towards the organization A. So basically only on edge switches you can configure VTP mode off, so that if this switch is receiving any VTP update from here, it is not gonna to advertise them towards other switches, because if you configure this switch in transparent mode, it will not update its own database, but still it can transmit a copy of those VTP update messages towards other switches, is not it? So it can cause a big problem in your network. So to prevent your network from these kind of problems, you are having this VTP mode off. Fine. The second thing, nothing.
और तो केवल ड्राइवर बोल रहा था जब जाएगा नहीं तो
ट्रैफिक तो जाएगा। VTP का काम क्या होता है?
अच्छा मेरे ट्रैफिक जाएगा मेरे तो क्यों जाएगा आप बोल रहे हो ऑफ जा रहे हैं
VTP is simply responsible for VLAN's information only, not for your data. This was my very first statement. Have you understood it now, that where will you configure your VTP mode as off in VTP version 3? And one more thing, one more interesting thing about VTP version 3. Even if you are using VTP mode server, then also you cannot add or remove VLANs. Primary. Among all server switches, there will be only one primary server, and only on that primary server you can add or remove VLANs. As now you can see on switch 1, when you configure this command show VTP status, was there any primary server? Hello, show VTP status, check it out. For feature VLAN,
no.
Is there any primary server?
No.
So if there is no primary server, it means that there is no primary server right now, right? It means at least this switch is not working as a primary server, right? So if this switch is not working as a primary server, it means you cannot add or remove VLANs from its VLAN database. Fine. In same manner, now I'll move on switch 2 and I'll configure its VTP domain as CCIE now, and then after I can also say on all. I will change its VTP mode. One more thing, if you change your VTP version either 1 or 2, like you were running VTP version 1, then you configure VTP version 2 on your server, then it will update VTP version of all other switches dynamically. But if you configure VTP version 3 on one switch, it will not be possible for that switch to update other switches VTP version. No. For configuring VTP version 3, you have to take console of each and every device, each and every switch, and you have to configure your VTP version 3 manually, statically on all switches. It's not gonna to update dynamically. So now you can see on switch 2 show VTP status, still it is running. So you have to configure VTP version 3 manually. And you understand very well that if you configure VTP version 2 on any one of the switch, and if they were running VTP version 1, then all of them, you will require to do changes only on one switch. Then it will update all other switches to configure VTP version 2. Fine. But here in case of VTP version 3, it is not like that. If you are going to configure VTP version 3, then configure it on all switches throughout the switched network. Fine. So this time only these two switches can support this VTP version 3 actually. Switch 1 and switch 2. Switch 3 and switch 4 cannot support VTP version 3 because they are actually from 3550 series of switches. Fine. So on this series we cannot configure VTP version 3. So now you can see on switch 2 show VTP status. Now for feature VLAN, its default mode is what?
Transparent.
And this time its default mode have become as transparent. How? Because previously its VTP mode was also transparent. So this time you need to say that VTP mode for VLAN, because there are multiple features: feature VLAN, feature MST, and this is unknown. Leave it, right? We have to use only feature VLAN and feature MST. So because right now we are using this VTP just to propagate VLAN's information. Fine. So we have to configure this switch in server mode only for VLANs. That's why I added this keyword in the end of like server, VTP mode server, and then you have all these options. Like I have to say VLAN. So this time you will see that show VTP status. Check it out. Now it is server, but still there is no switch which is working as a primary server. See, switch 1 and switch 2, both of them are working as a server, but none of them is working as a primary server. It means that now you cannot add or remove any VLAN information from any one of these switch, like either from switch 1 or switch 2. So now no, like if you say no VLAN 10, you cannot. VLAN 20, you cannot. VLAN 5. You cannot add any VLAN. See, it is simply saying VTP VLAN configuration not allowed when device is not the primary server for VLAN database. So now you will require to configure any one of the switch as a primary server. To configure any one of the switch as a primary server, the command will be in privilege mode only. VTP
Mode.
primary for what? VLAN or MST? VLAN. So you have to say VLAN. Enter. This system is becoming primary server for feature VLAN. So now for VLANs, this switch one is gonna to be primary server. Fine. So now this switch have become, see, this switch have become primary. Even if you say show VTP status, check it out. This switch is working as a
Primary server.
and this is the ID of the primary server, and if device ID here and the primary ID is common, it means this switch itself is working as a primary server, and even it is showing you that this is working as a primary server. So if you want to add or remove VLANs now, and one more thing, its CR number is what? 1, because now I configured it as a primary server. Previously it was 0. See, if you configure your VTP version from 2 to 3 or from 1 to 3, then also its CR number will become 0. Its CR number will become 0, and this time it have become 1. You know why? Because I configured this switch as a primary server, so that it has to inform its neighbor switches that I am primary server. So how will it be possible to inform its neighbor switches if it does not send these VTP updates with higher CR number? That is why this time they have this switch 1 have configured its CR number 1. That is why switch 2 will receive this VTP update with higher CR number. So now you can see show VTP status, and this time its CR number is what? 1. And this is your primary
ID.
server's ID.
Even description.
Fine, and this time you can see that the device ID and the primary ID is not same. It's different. It means this switch is not working as a primary server. It means still you cannot add or remove any VLAN from the VLAN database of switch 2. Like if you wanna say no VLAN 10, you can't do that. But if you move on switch 1 now, and if you wanna say no VLAN 1 to 100, show VLAN brief. Is there any VLAN now? Show VTP status. Now this time its CR number must be 2. And this time VLANs must also not available on switch 2 as well. Tell me, is it okay for you now?
Yes.
Let me tell you now that even you can also create now extended VLAN in VTP mode server as well. Let me show you. If you move here on switch 1, say VLAN 1023. So this is kind of, so this VLAN must present here. See, in server only I have created it, right? Even you will also find it on switch 2 now, because now extended VLAN can also be propagated with the help of VTP version 3. So VTP version 3 can also have this, extended VLAN information as well. So you can see now that extended VLAN is present on switch 2 as well.
So this extended VLAN information is present in
VLAN.dat itself now.
not in running.
Of course, like you can try to run this you can see that this is running config of this switch. There's nothing. There's no information related to VTP. See, or related to VLANs. Nothing. Fine. So whole information will get stored inside VLAN.dat in VTP version 3. So in this way you will do this type of configuration now. Fine. Then after, what can we do here? Like for an example, I want to configure this switch 2 as a primary server now. So I can do like what will be your command? VTP primary for VLAN. That's the only thing that you need to do. And now switch 2 will become primary server. It will take some time. Show VTP status. It have become now primary server, and switch 1 show VTP status. Check it out.
Server.
Only server. It means now you cannot add or remove VLAN's information from switch 1. Second thing, VTP password is also secure here. Yeah, you can encrypt your VTP password, right? Like if you configure VTP password Cisco, and if you say show VTP password, it will still show you Cisco, but say no VTP password, fine. And then after say VTP password Cisco, and then after you have these two options available, hidden and secret. If you take hidden, with using this keyword you can take any length of password, like 5 character long, 10 characters long password, something like that. But if you say secret, for secret it must have, your password must be 32 characters long. So I will not say secret, because to configure secret password I will require to configure 32 characters long password, fine. So I will say hid only, and this time show this is your password. In same manner, I'll configure this password on switch 2 as well. VTP password Cisco was it, and then show VTP password. One more thing I would like to tell you, when you configure VTP password hidden, when you configure VTP hidden password on switches will lost their primary state. Whoever was primary server will lost its primary state once again, and CR number will also become 0. Check it out. Show VTP status. It is not primary server now, switch to right. It is simply server, and CR number is also 0. And is there any primary server now? There will be advantage of doing it actually. There will be. You know how? When you configure, let's say that you want to configure this switch 1 as a primary server now, right? So the command will be VTP primary for VLAN. What is it saying? This is the advantage of doing that. If you don't know password, you cannot make it primary. And if you want to see password,
Encrypt.
so it's not possible that any user can add switch on any VLAN, or can add or remove VLAN on any switch. It's not possible now in VTP version 3 if you don't know about your password. Because to configure your switch as a primary server, it will always ask for VTP password, and previously in older versions of VTP, like VTP version 1 and version 2, it was really easy to see VTP password. But now you can't see your VTP password. It is secure password now. It is hidden.
So even if we create password in secret mode, will it be the same like this?
Of course. Understood its security features now. So even if you are the network admin but you don't know about the VTP password and you have the full right of your device, then also you cannot add or remove VLANs from your switch. Like this time VTP pass. Okay, let me do one thing. Let me configure it as a primary now, first of all. So it was Cisco. So it will become now primary. So whenever I will move on switch 2, and if I try to configure switch 2 as a primary server, then again it will ask for password. Oh my god, I said C. Show VTP status. Still there is no primary. So I have to configure this command once again. Cisco. It takes some time. So I hope that now you are able to differentiate VTP version 1, 2 and 3. So you can see now that switch 1 have become primary. Check it out. And its CR number is again 1. Even if you move on switch 2, show VTP status, that's fine. It's normal server, and you cannot add any VLAN from here like VLAN 10. Of course, no, it's not possible. But if you move on switch 1, and if you want to add some VLANs like VLAN 1 to 10, no problem. show VTP status. It will give this information to switch 2 now. Tell me, is there any problem now? So in this way you can do this kind of configuration. Fine. So whenever you will require to configure any switch as a primary server, it will always ask for password, and if you don't know your password, if you don't know VTP password, then you cannot define your switch as a primary server. And if your switch is not a primary server, it means you cannot add or remove VLANs. Next thing, as I said, that if you configure private VLANs, then also they can move from one switch to another switch. Let me show you. I'll move on switch 1 and I'll configure, I'll create private VLANs. Let's say that VLAN 100 or VLAN 10. I said private VLAN is what? Community. You know very well that in private VLANs we have these things, community, isolated, right? Then you created VLAN 20 and community, again private VLAN community, VLAN 30. Let's say private VLAN isolated. Then let's say you are gonna to create VLAN 100, which is primary VLAN. So you will say private VLAN primary, and then private VLAN association 10, 20, 30. That's it. Now to see all these VLANs, the command will be show VLAN private VLAN. So all these VLANs are. Have we created these private VLANs on switch 2 before? Show VLAN I think it was really confusing for you that what is the meaning of it. There is one topic of private VLAN. During that topic only I will make you understand that what is the uses of private VLAN, where to implement it, how to use it. Don't worry about that. I just wanted to show you that if you configure, because previously in VTP version 1 and version 2 it was mandatory to configure your VTP mode as transparent before going to configure private VLANs. But here in VTP version 3 you can configure private VLANs, you can create private VLANs even you are having your VTP mode as server, I mean in VTP mode server itself, and also they will be propagated throughout the switched network. As you can see that now we created these private VLANs on switch 1, but we can also find them on switch 2 as well. Are you okay with it now? All of you? Next point is MST. Like, I hope that all of you have configured this MSTP. Again, this is another topic, right? I'll be going through that, but right now I just need to show you that previously it was mandatory to configure MST configuration on all switches individually, right? But here after configuring VTP version 3 you will simply require to do configuration of MSTP only on one switch. Then all that configuration, all that information will be propagated throughout the switches dynamically. I hope you remember MSTP. Like in MSTP we configure multiple instances manually, right?
Yeah.
So previously it was required to configure these instances manually on all switches, right? But now it's not mandatory. It's not mandatory, right? In VTP version 3, if you configure it only on one switch, then this information will be propagated throughout the switch domain dynamically. Let's do it now. First of all, you must see show VTP status. You will see that for MST, for feature MST, it is by default in. So if you configure any configuration, if you do any configuration on this switch related to MST, it means it will never advertise that information towards its neighbor switch, because by default it is working in transparent mode for feature MST. So first of all you need to change its mode, VTP mode for feature MST. So do one thing, say VTP mode server for MST. In same manner I'll do configuration of switch 2, VTP mode server for MST, and then after let's do one more thing, let's configure their spanning tree mode as MST as well. Spanning tree mode is what? MST. On switch 2 also spanning tree mode is what? MST. And then after you can do one thing, you see show VTP status, check it out. For feature MST it is working as a server, but is there any primary server for feature MST?
No.
you can see that switch 1 is configured as a primary server for feature VLAN. So it's not mandatory that now we must configure switch 1 only to as a primary server for all features. No, it's not mandatory. Now you can do one more thing. You can configure the switch 2 as a primary server for feature MST. So you do one thing, say primary, so sorry, VTP primary for what? MST password Cisco. So without allocating password, without knowing password, it's not possible to do anything on your switch. I mean related to VTP only. So this time you see that it have become now show VTP status. See, primary, not for feature VLAN, only for feature MST it is working as a primary. So now what will I do? I will do some configuration related to MSTP on switch 2 only. Spanning tree MST configuration. Let's say instance 1 VLAN 1 to 5, instance 2 VLAN 6 to 10. That's what I configured here. Even you can also configure revision number 10. Just come outside. Oh, actually these are secondary VLANs mapped to primary, so I cannot use them here for MSTP because I have already configured like private VLANs here, so that's why I can't do that. So what can we do now? Spanning tree MST configuration. Let's say instance 1 VLAN like 100 to 105, and then instance 2 VLAN 10, are you getting my point? 6 to 110, and revision 10. Just come outside. Again 100 is there. My God. Instance 1 VLAN 500 to and instance 2 VLAN what is this? Show spanning tree MST configure. Let me show you. Okay, it is still because it didn't overwrite the previous configuration. That's why it was showing me all that that error message actually, because it didn't overwrite the previous configuration. So still we are having 1 to 5 in instance 1, right? But you can see at least we have done this configuration, right? So we must found this configuration on switch 1 as well automatically. Show spanning tree MST. Have we done any configuration of MST on switch 1? We just configured, we did this configuration only on switch 2, but with the help of VTP version 3 we have also got this information on switch 1 as well. Fine. If you want to configure your mode O for transparent, it is also very simple. Like you can say VTP mode and like client off, server transparent. It's up to you, right? Let's say you want to configure off for what? MST or for VLAN? Tell me. Let's say for MST. That's fine. Even now it will not work as a relay sent as well, right? So that's all about the VTP version 3. So I hope that now you have understood the security features of VTP version 3 and also some different features of VTP version 3 as well. Like you configure private VLAN on one switch, then it was propagated towards another switch dynamically, and then you configured private VLANs. You also configured like extended VLAN, and you also configured this MSTP as well. So it's up to you that what do you want to use actually in your network, VTP version 1, 2 or version 3. But remember that in VTP version 3 there is no security vulnerability. Of course there will be, but right now we do not have any security vulnerability in VTP version 3, because if you don't have any, if you don't have password information, if you don't know about password, if you don't know password, it means you can't perform anything. You cannot add any VLAN, you cannot remove any VLAN from your VLAN database. That's it.